In this video, we will learn how to make a 2D player that jumps, shoots bullet and moves left to right with the new input system, which is super easy, barely an inconvenience. So smash the like button, hit subscribe, and let's get started. So to get started, we need to first install the new input system from our package. So go to Windows and then into Package Manager. Then in Advanced Setting, click on Show Preview Packages. Then you'll see all of the packages here, every different packages. Then search for the input system and then just install it. Since I've already installed it, well, I'm just gonna cross it now. After doing that, go to Edit in Project Settings. In your player, click on Others, and in the Active Input Handling, I would suggest click on both because you're probably coming from the old input manager to the new input system. I would say click on both. Once you do that, hit apply and it will restart your Unity. Just let it restart, and after doing that, here let's create an input actions. This is an input action. Let's give it a name called controls. And now first of all, let's just create a C# code which will have all the controls that we will set up. Now here you can change its class file name or the class name or the namespace to anything you like. If you don't do anything, it will just make a C# script named controls. Got it? So hit apply. I don't want anything else, so hit apply. There's a C# code called controls, and here there will be all the controls that we need to move our player. So double click on it, it'll open a tab. Let's put it here, and here you can see there are three things. Now this input maps is the object we want to control. In our case, it will be the player, P-L-A-Y, yeah. We want to control the player, and these actions are what the player will do. Meaning for the first action, let's say the player will jump, and the bindings are the key that will make the player jump. That means here if I just hit on listen and press the space key, that means now when I press the space key, the player will do jump. We can add one more binding here like this, and let's say I'm gonna put the up arrow. All right. Now we need to save this, but before I save this, I want to show you something. Let's go click on control, and here, as you can see, there is nothing related to our player input scheme, right? Nothing related, but when I save, now you'll see something has changed. As you can see, there is a player action map, action called jump, which is a button type. In here, there are different types called button, value, or pass through. I will tell you about this later. For now, just keep it as button. And as you can see, now there are two bindings, which is a keyboard binding called space and another keyboard binding called up. You, if you want to, can also have other kind of bindings. If I just go here and click on mouse, and let's say left button. So now whenever I press the space key or the up key, or if I click on my game view, then the player will jump. So let's just save this to add that as well. And now back in here in our player, let's add a player controller. Put our player controller, let's open it in Visual Studio. And first of all, remove this, and you can also remove these two. And then just make a duplicate of this and write dot input system. This is for the new input system. And here let's make a reference to our control input action by writing controls, and let's call it C-O-N-T-R-O-L. Let's call it control. Now let's make it public. I want to show you something that we cannot. Here, as you can see, even though I have it as public, we cannot drag and drop these controls here. So that's why in an awake function, just write control is equal to new controls. So this is the reference for our control, and to use our player action map, we need to write control.player.set callback, and in the instance you need to write this. Now this script will be able to control the player. So with this line of code, this script will be able to control the player action. map. Instead of control, let's write use the player action map. This line will help us use the player action map. So at the top, write comma, and here we need to write controls dot I player actions. We need this. In my case, it is I player's action. If you have written something else here instead of player, then it will be that. Let's say you wrote player movement instead of player, then it will be an I player movement actions. So as you can see here, something is wrong. So just right click this, and in quick action and refactoring, just apply on implement interface. It will create a jump function called onJump, which is basically this jump action. So whatever we write here, once we press any of these key, then whatever is written here will be executed. So let's just cut and paste it down here. And before doing this, we need to write two things. One will be your onEnable, and the another will be a private void onDisable. So in onEnable and onDisable, whenever this code is enabled or disabled, basically let's write it here, whenever this script is enabled or disabled, then the player action map will also be enabled or disabled. So for that, we just need to write here control.player.enable, control.player.enable, and down here you need to write control.player.disable. So now in this jump key, first of all, let me show you something. That is, let me show you some output from this. All right, debug.log, and inside here, if you write context, not control, context dot, and if I write action, it will show you which action is happening here in our Unity. So let's go back in Unity, and here in the console, if I hit play, and if I just click here, then it will show you that from our player action map, the jump action is happening, and any one of this key has been pressed. I just pressed the mouse button, that's why it said that. If I press space key, it will say the same thing. If I don't collapse it, yeah. As you can see, new inputs are being implemented. Now, if you want to see which key we are actually pressing, write context.control. Now it will show you which key we are actually pressing. So go back to Unity, let's clear this, hit play. And now when I click with the mouse, it will say a button is being pressed, which is a mouse left click. If I press the space key, it will say keyboard space is being pressed. We have W, oh we don't have W, we have the up key. So if I press up, it will say a keyboard's up key is being pressed. Cool. Now we can have different phases of our button press as well. So write phase. I'm going to show you what phases are. Basically, when I start it, and let's say when I'm pressing the space key, it will say phases as start and phases is being performed. And when I leave the space key, it will say this phase is cancelled. That means when I start pressing the button, it will say context.started. When I am pressing the button, we can say context.performed, and when I stop pressing the button, we can say context.cancelled. So let's use this to make our player jump. So let's remove this and write if context, not control, god damn it. So write if context.started, that means you have started pressing the button, then we need to make our player move. We need to make our player move. For now, let's just write debug.log, player is moving. So now if I press the space key, then it will print player is moving. So now let's make our player jumps. For that, we need a public rigid body 2D player RB. Public rigid body 2D player RB, and we also need a jump height. So write public float jump height, public float jump height. So this is all that we need, and in here let's just write player RB dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, and in the x-axis we don't need to change anything, so write player RB PLA player RB dot velocity dot x, but in the y-axis we need to change something, so write jump height multiplied by time dot fixed delta time. So if you just write this, hit save, and back in Unity in our player we need to drag our rigid body 2D and then give it some amount of jump height, let's say 500. Alright, now if I hit play, let's make it a bit bigger, and if I just click here, the player will jump. Or if I just press the space key, the player will jump. Or if I hit the up arrow, the player will jump. And now we can add other action. The first action was to jump. Now let's add another action, and let's call it fire. It will all still be a button. Now in the binding section, to make our player fire, I'm going to say the shift key will make the player fire. If you want to add something else, we can add something else. Let's say the F key will also fire. Now everything is set up, and when I press the save asset, you can see something is wrong here. If you go to that, you can see that it will say, when I click on quick fix, it will say we don't have an on fire function because we just now created a fire input action system. Got it? So for that we need an on fire function, so just click on quick action, click on implement interface, and it will create an on fire function. Remove this, and now if I write if context dot started, that means we started pressing the fire key, then here shoots bullet. So that means it should instantiate a bullet prefab, bullet game object, right, from our transform dot position with, let's say, no rotation. So quaternion dot identity. So let's make a bullet prefab. So here just write for shooting, let's make a game object called bullet game object. Everything is done here. If I just go back, I already have a bullet prefab, which is just a simple bullet which just goes to the right side. Nothing so fancy about it, so just leave it. Now here in our bullet section, which is apparently private, let's make it public. Public. Cool. So in this public bullet section, just drag and drop your bullet prefab. So now when I hit play and press this shift key, you can see I can shoot a bullet. And also I'm pressing the shift key. So if I press the F key, the same thing happens. But as you can see, if you keep on holding the F key, nothing happens. We cannot shoot a bullet. And because we want the bullet to keep on shooting until we are holding the F or the shift key, what we need to do is basically write else if context dot cancel, that means we have stopped pressing the button, then it should stop shooting the bullet. Stop shooting the bullet. So for this to happen, we need to make a boolean called bool is shooting. Let's make a boolean called is shooting, and let's just copy this. Now instead of this guy, what we need to write is whenever we start pressing the fire key, then is shooting should be true, and whenever we stop pressing the fire key, is shooting should be false. Let's just copy this, and in an update function, let's keep it down here, update function, just write if is shooting, meaning if is shooting is equal to true, then it will instantiate a bullet. We can also have some amount of fire rate, but for now I'm not going to put it here. Let's just save this for now, and I'm going to show you that it works. So now instead of only happening once, see, the longer I keep on pressing, the more bullet it will shoot. It's shooting too many bullets right now because we don't have something like a fire rate. If you want to create a fire rate, let's just write a float called fire rate and a float called next fire time. And in here, in this update function, just write and next fire time is less than time dot, not that, time dot time. Then it will shoot, and down here write next fire time is equal to time dot time plus fire rate. Time dot time plus fire rate. So if I just do this, then the player will start shooting at a certain fire rate. Let's make this public, because we only want this to be public. Right? If I come here and let's say we're going to give it 0.25. So every 0.25 seconds it will shoot a bullet if I press the fire keys. Got it? See? As you can see, I can shoot bullets. Cool. Now let's make the player move, and for that we need to create another action map. This time call it movement, and just delete this binding. And here, instead of button, write pass through, and in control type, if you put it as an axis, then you can have bindings that will have a positive, a positive and a negative value. Let's call it A and D control. And as you know, if I give a negative value on the x-axis, then the player can move on the left side, and if I give a positive value on the x-axis, then the player can move to the right side. So we can use this to move our player. So in here, in the path section, for the negative, let's write A. So the A key will make my player move on the left side. And in here, for the positive, write D. The D key will make the player move on the right side. So let's add one more binding, 1D axis binding, and which will be arrows. Arrows, the negative arrow will be the left key and the positive arrow will be the right key. So after setting this up, it is done. Hit save. Again, it will say some problem is here, right? Click on it. It will say some problem is here. Quick fix, not rename. Quick fix. And here we need to just make an on movement function. Have an on movement function. Now let's just bring it up here, and then here, first of all, let me show you something. So debug.log, and if I write context.read value as object, and then hit play and press the A and D key, as you can see, when I'm pressing the A key, it says -1 because it's giving a negative value, and when I press the D key, it's giving +1. When I don't press anything, it'll give a 0 as a value. As you can see, there is -1, 1 plus 1 because I was pressing that, but 2 zeros because I have stopped pressing the button. So now, as you can see, this is all in a float or an integer. You can also say that, but let's say a float. That means we can make this read a value of float. So write float move, float called move. Let's make a float called moved and write context.read value. And inside a parameter, we need to write this value. We need to read this value as a float, not cube map, float, as a float. So now I think we need to make this, sorry. Let's just copy this and make this for our movement. For movement, and here write float, press this. All right, this is going to be the movement direction. Let's write move direction instead of movement. Let's do this. Right click, rename, and write move direction. So hit apply, everything will be changed. I think here is also move direction. Now, whenever I press the A key, the move direction will be minus. Whenever I press the D key, the move direction will be plus. So here in our update function, we just need to write for our movement. So player, not plane, god damn it. Player RB dot velocity is equal to new vector2, and inside now we need to change our x-axis, so write move direction into, let's say, speed, some amount of speed, which is going to be called speed, and into time dot fixed delta time, comma, we don't need to change anything on the y-axis, so write player RB dot velocity dot y. Let's make a float called speed. And there you go, everything is done now. Now if I just go back, clear everything up, hit play, and if I press the A or D key, nothing happens because we have not set our speed. Now that the speed has not been set. I always make this mistake. Let's make it public, PU public, and in our speed, let's give it, let's say 500 will be good. So now when I hit play, press the left or right key, the player starts moving, or A or D key. Let me show you which keys am I pressing as well. So here, let's just write debug.log, not decimal, debug.log, and inside here write context.control. Now let's hit play. And as you can see, when I press the A or D key, left and arrow, right arrow works. Now A and D key also works. And if you want, you can also set up some other keys. You know you can. Let's just set up one more key called, let's say J and L. This will be the J and L key. Alright, so the negative will be J, and the positive will be L. And save this, put it down here, it's loading, and again when I press the, come here, and again when, let's just clear everything up, when I press the A and D key, it moves left and right. When I press the right and left arrow, it moves left and right, and when I press the J and K key, it moves left and right. So it may look confusing at first, but it's not that confusing. So let's just have a little bit of recap here. This is a reference to our controller. Input action, not controller. INPUTACTION. Input actions. This is just for making the player jump. This is for shooting. This is for movement. This script will be able to use the player movement action. Right? This line of code will make this script use the player action. This player action will be enabled or disabled according to our will. Whenever this code is enabled or disabled, this will also be enabled or disabled. That is it. Now here we make the player jump. Here we make the player fire. And we need to make it like this because this only gives an output when we press, meaning it no continuous update, because it does not give a continuous update. That's why we have to use something like this. And that is why we need to use an update function to update every frame for things that needs to be updated, like every frame, like this player movement or this shooting. Got it? So I hope you understood what is going on here. I hope this made it a bit more easier for you to understand how to use the new input system. I hope you liked the video. Please hit the subscribe button for more content like this, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.